Here we go, another episode of Canada on the Rocks. I am your host, Fadi Kudair, local realtor with Sutton Group, Ottawa. And today I am joined with one of my friends, but not really friends. I was friends with her sister, not knowing that they're sisters. They knew that they were twins. But here we are, Carina Guzman. How are you?
Doing great, Fadi. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I've heard a lot about creative dev. We've had Dave on the show.
Yes,
Talked a little bit more. Yeah, talked a lot more about creative dev. And I want to kind of get your perspective on it since you are sort of the woman behind the scenes running the show. Tell me a little bit more about how you guys got creative dev started. What is creative dev to start with? How you got it started, and let's go from there.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here.
I appreciate you making the time. Yeah.
And yeah, I appreciate you having me here. And Dave did such a great job last time. It was
fantastic
awesome.
interview. Yeah. Energy that we have, the two of us, is just unreal. Yeah.
Totally.
Love it.
It's fun, right? It's just fun. So yes, so thanks for the question. Creative Dev is a land development company. So Dave and I run that company. I initially started the company. This is now over 15 years now that we've been doing it. And it's purely from scratch, acquiring the land.
And Carina doesn't look a day over 27.
Exactly.
So 15 years, she must have started when she was 13, I think.
Exactly. That's right. You got it.
Got
I was a very quick entrepreneur, I guess, very young entrepreneur. Yeah, so that's what it's about. It's really about, we started with transit-oriented developments. It's basically just means development within the transit line, usually around 600 meters. And it's because most cities want growth within the transit line, so it makes a lot of sense. And that's what we focused on, or I focused on primarily, and then grew that from smaller scale developments to mid-rise and then to high-rise. And then from there, we decided to take on the company into more community buildings. So focusing around plan of subdivisions, master plan communities, and really doing more larger scale, which is nice because it allows you to do a variety of different housing types. It could be from commercial, retail, to singles, to towns, to multifamily, the whole thing when you're building communities.
The whole project. And it's I've always been fascinated by those little designs, the little cities and stuff like that. My dad is an architect. I think I've told you this before, architectural engineering. And he's always been able to kind of do those little mock-ups. Are you guys doing any of those, and how exciting are these?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's placemaking, So you're really you're creating the space and analyzing the space. And we work with the architects and the planners and actual space makers, people who just focus on that alone. It's quite an art just to create a whole entire community. I mean, everybody knows a community. Everybody has walked through a community or bought a house in a community. But behind the scenes, when you're just taking the land from complete raw states and then really piecing together where should everything kind of go, that in itself is quite an art. And it requires a lot of expertise, a lot of people like your father, I'm sure, on working on all of those things. And the type of pre-planning and workload that happens years before these communities even happen. For me, it's fun. Like, I find it super fun. And we work with a lot of really great professionals, consultants, and people in that space. And of course, our team as well, internally at CDB, Creative Dev Ventures. So that's like the fun part for me. It's like being very artsy, and it's like being able to think outside the box and put different things together and how things work together.
So I want to touch, because you've talked about when you guys first started, you were doing mostly around the transit line.
Yes.
Why?
So at the time, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but the city of Ottawa was investing a lot of money around the transit line and extending the LRT, so the light rail train system. And that's a huge money component, right? It's a huge budget. I mean, billions of dollars put into the transit line. So the city had also, as part of that initiative, put out intensification maps around these transit lines. And at the time, I had been a real estate investor. I was buying and holding, and I wanted to take my real estate investing to the next level. I just didn't know what exactly. And I had read an article in the Ottawa Business Journal that said the city of Ottawa is supportive of intensification around the transit.
What does that mean to people?
It means that the city wants growth, as much growth around the transit. And usually that growth is vertical, right?
Yeah, so a lot more density in a way.
A lot more density. So it's like taking that little tiny bungalow that's sitting on a large lot, which you see them all over the place, and really taking that down, demolishing it, and building something of higher density, higher numbers.
So it's really just, again, thinking about it from the city's perspective, and correct me if I'm off the mark here, it's basically, well, we spent this amount of billions of dollars to try to get that transit line going.
Yes.
How can we get a lot more people using it?
Exactly, right? So
in a way that it's convenient.
Exactly, that's it. That's really what it is. It's getting more people to use the transit. They remove the parking requirements, I should say, the parking requirements around the transit line, so that it incentivizes other people not only to invest around the transit line as like a growth investment, but also having the people that will eventually live there also use the transit line. So it's in the best interest of the cities as they grow to create these plans for allow growth where they have put in their infrastructure and put a lot of money into it.
So in a way, it's like we're trying to be, I don't want to say trying to be New York, but just in a way trying to dense up the city.
And I mean, it's quite the opportunity when you think about it, Fatty, because if you go to New York, right, or you go to a major metropolitan, all of these transit stations have already been built up. And it doesn't happen in every single city. It just happens that sometimes the city might be in a growth state, and you may be in that kind of market, some of your audience, where you see that there is the potential of the growth. And if the city is going to put in that kind of massive investment, there's a huge opportunity for us as investors or as entrepreneurs to take on some of these projects and benefit out of them.
And what have you noticed in terms of the city allowing or, helping you guys facilitate that? How has the journey been with the city trying to?
So that's a good question, because when we first started, this is 14 years ago, 15 years ago now, it wasn't as extensive of workload as it is today.
Yeah.
And, back then I always joke, when I first started, my list of reports and studies and everything was like this big when I submitted an application. Now our list is this exhaustive. And even then, you might still have other lists and other things imposed on you as part of your development application that you didn't consider or that the city didn't consider and now has decided to put it on. So things have definitely changed. When we first began, it was not the case. It was pretty straightforward. As long as you followed the plan, things have definitely changed now. But however, with that said, there's also that huge push of creating more housing nationwide, basically, and a lot of new policies and new plans put in place to allow for more growth to happen.
And like for folks that are watching, like if you didn't know this, right now we've been behind by roughly about 5 million homes as a nation.
Yeah.
For us to be able to catch up, we need 5 million homes all at once in 1 year.
Which is
the highest year on record that Canada has been able to build was 2.2 million. And that's in the last 20 years. So I can imagine like how far off are we?
So far off, right? Yeah. And so there's so many, CMHC bringing out their program. There's a lot of grant money that's out there being put out to help with creating more affordable housing. There's a ton of initiatives happening all around Canada and US, everywhere around the world, on how to create more housing quicker. You probably heard a lot of prefabrication, modular construction, tiny homes, packaged homes, whatever you want to call it, tons of initiatives going on there. And then, of course, the cities and the municipalities putting out new regulations and new plans in place to allow for housing to be developed faster.
Well, it's one of the reasons why, like, our tagline as an organization for me, Career Real Estate Group, is everybody deserves a home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, like, no matter what we do, we need a roof over our head no matter what, whether it's a rental or a house that we own. Obviously, it's better if you own it because then you're building equity and all of that stuff. So I want to go back to, at the beginning of the journey, you got yourself going with the, smaller subdivisions and some smaller multi-units and stuff. How did it scale up?
That's a good question. It actually doesn't take a lot to scale up. The thing about development, and I think actually I should say that it's probably the same with pretty much every other real estate strategy out there, is that once you begin and you understand the principles around development, how to acquire the land properly, so you want to make money on your buy, how do you underwrite the project, how do you put the plans together, whether you're doing an 8-plex or whether you're doing a 64 unit, it's the same workload.
It's funny you say that because we used to say the same. I still say the same when it comes to sales. Whether you're dealing with a transaction like somebody's buying a box of gummies or someone is buying, a multi-million dollar, still the same process.
Exactly.
It's just some of it takes a little bit longer. Obviously, you have more reports, like you said, more things to do. More on the go, but the psychology of selling is the same. The psychology of building, I guess it could be the same.
The psychology of developing land and construction is the same, whether you're doing that smaller scale or the larger scale. It's just that you have to do a bit more due diligence, and there's a bit more work, more checklist items that you want to check. From
checklist items. Yes. I love that. The one thing that you've mentioned, and it kind of got me thinking, you started lately doing this course.
Yes.
You're teaching a course about land development and things like that. And I want to just let the audience know a little bit more about it, what you guys do there, how you got about creating that course. Obviously, the years of experience that you have behind kind of support you, but tell us a little bit more what to expect.
Yeah. This is actually my 5th year running land development course.
Wow.
And it actually just, honestly, Patty, it came about totally unexpected. It wasn't initially my plan. However, with a lot of people looking to get into real estate, I was getting a lot of questions about, can you help me look into development? A lot of people invest in real estate and want to go to the next step. Maybe you've already done some BRRRRs, maybe you've done some buy and hold, maybe you've done some multifamily, and then you're like, okay, what's next? Which is a natural progression for a lot of people. So I actually began this in 2019, just from people asking me, can you teach me? Can you show me or give me some guidance? And I took on just a handful of students back then. It was totally like I didn't even have a course then. It was just me transferring my knowledge and giving advice and almost like holding their hand through the process. And then from there, I ended up taking it to an online course and completely launched that fully in 2021. And with that, I ended up enrolling a whole bunch of students that have gone through the program now. And this course, so I just launched my Land Development Academy, and it's the 3rd revision from where I started. And I think it's by far the best one. It's the most comprehensive one. I've learned so much throughout the years on how the students digest the information, the types of different scenarios and analysis and case studies that we provide so that the students can learn the content almost in a hands-on kind of way without actually being hands-on. And that's really the whole reason why I created this 3.0 version of my other program, because I now understand how the students, what kind of questions they have, what kind of gaps there are, what kind of examples to give them, what kind of knowledge they need to progress them from start to finish. So I'm really excited about this Land Development Academy because it's my 3rd revision. I think it's by far the best version of the course from all of the years of going through it with some students.
And I like how you said it's hands-on. Like a lot of the times when, we're looking to study something or we're going to school, like a big thing when I was going to school, a lot of the professors and the teachers and what have you, they're academic. They've done, they've done their studies. Some of them haven't actually been out to the field and try things, but they're very smart. They know what they're doing because they've studied. With the hands-on, I feel like it's a whole other ball game because you've literally have been doing this for the last 15 years. It's not like, you've actually tried and tested every strategy that you're teaching in that course.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more about what to expect in that course, like what's some of the material and things like that to expect in the course.
So it really is taking somebody who really wants to get into development and learn how to do a development project, whichever scale that is. It could be a small land development, like fourplex, all the way to subdivisions. We teach the entire thing, and it's to help somebody be able to do it literally from start to finish. In terms of the acquisition of the land, making sure that you're buying it correctly, underwriting it properly, doing all the pre-planning that we have to do, a full due diligence, removing conditions, funding the project, how to fund it correctly. That's a big one for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Having multiple exit strategies already set up right from the beginning. And then, of course, exiting yourself and your investors successfully, and then moving on to phase 2, which at that point would be either selling the project as a whole or moving on to the construction. So it's really from start to finish.
A to Z. Real estate development, A to Z.
Yes.
By Carina Guzman.
Exactly. And we really I teach very much by my experience. So a lot of it has to do with case studies and literally going through live projects that we have done either like in the past or actually actively working through them.
Yeah.
And so we add a lot of bonus content, a lot of additional information. So the course itself is online and it's self-directed, like somebody can take it online and do it at their own pace. But the actual content is live. It actually moves forward as CDV is taking on more projects. We add more case studies, we add more master classes, we add more content to it so that it's constantly something that people can grow themselves into.
So when you say case studies, like you're talking about like recent projects that you've done, here's how we've done it kind of thing, see
Yes.
it from start to end.
Yep.
Wow, that's very eye-opening.
Yeah,
for a lot of people,
it
like,
is.
especially if I'm trying to do something, like the easiest way to do it is to emulate somebody that has already done it.
Yeah. I have found that most people learn through experience, right? And sometimes what happens is I can teach you the whole theory and I can tell you this is the full step. But until you actually do it yourself, you won't actually feel like you've learned it. Mm-hmm. And so what I've tweaked with this course is really taking you as if you're coming with me on that journey and seeing those case studies and seeing how we take it from start to finish so that it's almost like as if you're part of it. And that's where it really solidifies the content for most of our students.
Amazing. I want to dig into some of the experiences that you have on some of the projects that you've done over the years. Talk to me about one of your first sort of multi-units.
Oh my goodness. So one of the very first ones was a little bungalow that we bought right next to the transit line. Like you could throw a little rock to the transit. It was so close. And it was a little bungalow that was sitting on it on an oversized lot. It already had the as of right zoning. So the zoning already allowed for intensification. Mm-hmm. It was the highest development zone you could have in the residential zone. So in that respect, it was like a slam dunk. When we first bought it, we ended up putting a tenant in there right away because it had a little bungalow. The property carried itself. It was actually an estate sale, so we ended up getting it like just under, I think, or just a little over $200,000. Like it was so cheap back then. And then, and it covered. So the rent covered everything. The property was carrying itself with the revenue that was coming in. And then I did all the paperwork, right? So I worked with consultants and everything. I just kind of threw myself to the fire. And that one initially, it was an 8-plex that we got an approval for. And by the time we were done, the buyer, so the builder that ended up taking it on, tweaked it a little bit and made it into 12 units. So that was really great. And we ended up I ended up selling the approved plans, and I made $250,000 on that very first flipping the paper strategy. And that's when I was like, bing, like somebody would actually buy my plans and I can exit at that point. It was an eye-opener.
Amazing. But for folks that are watching, what you mean by that, I just want to kind of simplify it a little bit. It's basically you got the plot of land with the bungalow on it. You put somebody in there as a tenant. In the meantime, you got all the paperwork ready for the plans and for the development, and you've crossed all the hurdles that the city
and
has.
approvals, yes.
And approval. You got the stamp. You're ready to go. We're not digging yet. We're not demolishing yet. Let's go and sell it for somebody else that's going to do it. And you just walked out with the $250K on top as a profit.
Exactly.
Wow.
You got it.
Wow. So we hear a lot when it comes to real estate, a lot of gurus out there, or would-be gurus, if you will, that talk about, zero money down, zero financing, zero sort of coming into it with nothing. Does that strategy actually work?
It does, definitely. So I will say that when Dave and I initially started this whole thing, we used our own capital. We had our portfolio, we had our own capital, we used all of our resources as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So we actually grew the company that way on our own. And I think even still today, I would suggest for most people to try, especially as you're beginning, right? You want to start small, do something on your own. If you can ideally finance it, and this is the best way, right? Is don't go buy land, but land is very hard to finance. Go and buy a property that has development potential, ideally could hopefully carry itself so that you can take whatever funds you have and actually put it towards the approval process.
Yeah. And the approval process is not cheap. Like we're talking,
it's not cheap.
30, 40, 50 grand, maybe more sometimes depending on, because
depending on
you
where
still
you
got to
are.
get, architects involved. You still got to get studies involved, all of that stuff. So
exactly. However, though, with that said, the next way that we progressed is with our family. Our family was always been very supportive. My sister and my dad have always been like the first ones to always say like, I want in, I like what you're doing here and all that. And our family then kind of came on. So in a sense, it's like family and friends can be a great resource as well. Do it ethically, of course. It's always like, it's good and bad, right? When you're working with family. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure, so you want to make sure that you're doing things properly. So in that respect, I do see that a lot of people can come in with no money down, especially once you have the experience in what you're doing. And people will love what you're doing, especially if it's something that you absolutely love. Mm-hmm. I mean, I talk to people and they're just like, I want to be part of that because it just looks like so much fun and I want to learn through that experience. And, I've got some investment or I have some money to invest. Can I come in with you? That will happen at some point. I do see the no money down, but I really truly believe that if that's the, way you're going to go, learn it first. Learn it very well. Become an expert at what you're doing.
Or at least if you're going to put some money in getting a course done.
Exactly. You got
Just
it.
so you're not spending it on, you don't have any money. You're going to get people involved in this because obviously you're going to use somebody else's money.
Yeah.
Or the bank's money or whichever. The least you could do is secure those people.
Exactly.
By taking a course
Take
or
a
learning.
course. Learn about it. Bring on somebody that at least can give you guidance. Some kind of, just so you're not doing it all completely on your own. There are resources out there like the Land Development Academy, of course. There's coaches, mentors. All of that is important. And you'll see that when you do those kind of things, people will take you more seriously. And, of course, it'll give you the confidence that at least, like, I know who to ask if I don't have the answers. I have a mentor. I have a coach. I have a program that I'm part of or a community that I'm part of that I know where I can lean on to. Yeah. At least do that.
So here's a question when it comes to, using your mentors and things like that. How much leverage do you think mentors have and how much information do they need to be able to support you?
So the mentor itself, I really truly believe that it should be ideally someone who has been doing it. I do see a lot of mentors or coaches that perhaps maybe, 20 years ago, they were doing that kind of thing and they're still coaching, but they're no longer really active. Mm-hmm. And I think it has a lot of weight when somebody's still very active in what they're doing.
Definitely.
Because things change so much. I mean, exactly. How much has real estate changed? How much has the market changed?
It just changed like a week ago. There's so many things. Like every year, last year we had the new Treb versus, or sorry, that we just changed. Like everything changes. We had
Yes.
Reba, now it's Tressa. This year instead of Tressa, we still have Tressa, but we have the new systems in place. It's just nothing is the same, and if it's the same, it gets stagnant. And the same thing here. Like if the coach or the mentor is not necessarily up to date, that information is stale.
Exactly. So I would say that's so important to bring on a mentor or take on a course that actually teaches you real life. I think it's key, or at least the mentor, the coach is doing it as part of their business actively is really key, because you're going to get the most latest, greatest information you could possibly get. And then, of course, number 2 is to have somebody that can really give you up-to-date information.
Yeah.
So like for our students, I'm constantly sending them information. Just like you said, there's so much new stuff coming out and we're always keeping track of what's happening. I even have a lot of my students come to conferences with me. There's a ton of amazing other land development conferences out there. We make it a group thing. So it's like, let's go out there, let's spend a day, network, and meet other people and learn real up-to-date information on everything that's changing around us, so that we can make better decisions for our projects.
Yeah, and the beauty of like conferences and things like that, it also gives you insight on what's coming as well. Like, you know what I mean? If I know, I'll give you an example. If I know that the city of Ottawa is putting about 2,000 homes in the Canada area, well, I might want to invest there. Exactly. I might want to, find some other developers and do that. So I appreciate you being on the show. I appreciate that you're making the time for us. And for folks that are watching, if you guys like what you see, please don't forget to hit the like button and comment in the comment section. Let us know about any business that you would think of in the city of Ottawa that deserves to be on this podcast. And it doesn't have to be just the city of Ottawa. Anywhere around Ottawa, Gatineau's welcome as well too, even though we don't do business there, but we're still going to serve them. With that being said, subscribe, hit that little bell icon so you can get more and more alerts every time an episode comes out, and you'll learn about businesses around the city. And there's always incentives. There's always something to learn. And we try to make it as fun as possible. Thanks again. Love to see you soon.